Welcome to the very first Remote Hustle Tech Show and Tell. I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite productivity hacks and tricks and tools with you today. I'm Megan, for those of you who don't already know, and I'm the founder of RemoteHustle.com, which is a space for entrepreneurs and people who work remotely to collaborate, get feedback from each other, and share cool insights and information like what I'm about to do now. Okay, so I wanted to lead off with talking a little bit about productivity and what productivity means. Okay, so things that take a lot of time. A lot of times people think that if you're working for a long period of time, you're going to be more productive. So the opposite I've found is actually true. Spending less time on things actually makes you more productive, because the longer you're sitting there just like draining out your energy on a project that you're not feeling excited about working on, the longer it's going to take. So you've probably experienced this at some point in your own life when you're meeting a deadline and you notice that you have an unrealistic 30 minutes to get something together and somehow you pull it off. Or you may notice that there's been something on your to-do list for a really long time, like my friend Lynn mentioned yesterday, that she had something on her to-do list for a really long time because she was waiting to have a solid 2-hour block to actually do that one thing, when in reality that one thing actually only took 15 minutes. So the first challenge is to stop thinking of more time as equaling more productivity, because really the opposite is true. Okay, so I've kind of split these productivity tips into 4 categories or 4 steps, starting with number 1, which is eliminating the unnecessary. So a lot of times when we find ourselves busy, and you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes around the word busy, because we all love to be busy and busyness is glorified. However, a lot of the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis are really unnecessary. And so thinking about what it is that you're doing that you could just not do. For me, that has been spending more than a minute or 2 on a response email. Especially if it's just, someone's asking a quick question, or oftentimes we get requests from my main company, Conversations Digital. We're a marketing agency. We work specifically with solo and small firm lawyers. So I field a lot of requests from lawyers who are actually in competition with people we're working with. And I noticed I was spending a lot of time on an email back to them saying, I'm so sorry, but like we have this non-compete and like blah, blah, blah. And I noticed I was spending a lot of time on those emails just explaining myself and why I couldn't work with someone. That is a waste of time. That is an example of something that is truly, truly, truly unnecessary. Other things that are unnecessary, getting distracted by spam emails. One of the things that you can do for that is to just get rid of those things, unsubscribe from emails, or set your inbox up to where you have a secondary inbox. I use this program called Sane Later, which I really like. And I know Gmail, a lot of us use Gmail, has some internal tools for that now, but I still prefer to use Sane Later because of the sorting features. So eliminating the unnecessary, whatever that means for you. And sometimes that means taking a look at your task list from the last week and just circling all the things, saying like, would it matter if some of these things on this list just never got done? And then circle those things. Those are your unnecessary things. And the more you take stock of that and actually look at it, the more likely you are to actually make a change. So if you don't look at something, if you don't really, really look at it, chances are you're not going to have the data you need to make the decision of elimination. So the second part is going to be automating the repetitive. Using that same example of me spending too much time on an email back to someone saying, I can't work with you. I now have an email template for that. And I use a tool called Text Expander, which I will show you in a little bit, in order to really easily and quickly respond to people whenever they make those requests, so that I am still giving them what I consider a high touch service and, like a warm response, but I'm not spending more than a minute on that response. And then streamlining and delegating recurring processes. This is actually the hard one. A lot of people think setting up automations is hard. I think that that part's easy. What's difficult is the streamlining and the delegation of recurring processes, because you have to first document those processes. You have to create basically documentation and guides on like how to do those things. And then you have to train and delegate to someone else. Sometimes that could be a member of your team. Sometimes that could be a virtual assistant. I'm going to show you one example of a virtual assistant, basically what I call like a starter virtual assistant service for those who are interested in getting started. But delegation doesn't even have to just be, you know, someone within your organization or an assistant. Delegation can mean a lot of things. Sometimes delegating is asking your client for a little more. So instead of killing yourself trying to research, what did they mean by this, that, and the other? Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to come back to you and ask what you meant by that. And I created this form or this spreadsheet or this document, and I would like you to just fill this out so that I have the rest of the information that I need. So delegating can also mean kind of pushing back and requesting a little bit more so that you are then not going to do 2 hours of unnecessary research. And the fourth part is motivating yourself. And that is something that I've been working on a lot, especially during quarantine, is how do you keep yourself motivated and excited to do the work that you're doing? All right, so we talked a lot about eliminating the unnecessary, and the number one thing is sometimes you just say no. Maybe someone wants you to do them a favor. For me, sometimes some people ask me to collaborate on webinars or events that I think sound very, very cool at the time. But then once it gets around to, you know, that time, I'm really busy. I wish I hadn't said yes. And there's not really a clear benefit for my business or brand for me to be doing that. So someone, I don't remember who told me this the other day, but I thought it was really smart, said that before you say yes to something that is happening in the future, ask yourself, if this were happening in a few days or in a week, would I still say yes to it? And if the answer is no, you should say no. Because a lot of times we say yes because we think, oh, that's 4 months away. Sure, I'll commit to this thing that's going to eat up a week of my time because it's so far away it doesn't feel real. Make that feel real so that you can say no now if the answer is now. Delegate out what is, you know, not something that you need to do, and quick responses. Make your responses as quick as possible. So even those ones that you're not automating, don't overthink an email. When you're responding to someone, typically emails shouldn't be longer than 3 sentences anyways. So think about in terms of quick responses rather than every email being a work of art. Automating the repetitive. What I call my power duo of tools is Text Expander and Acuity, and I want to do a quick little demo of these and how these work. So I'm going to I'll start with Text Expander. So I should have pulled up a document, but let's just use an email example of this. Okay. So one of the things that I often respond to people with is, so I'll get an email intro from someone saying, hey, you should meet this person, you guys should chat. So I have a really, really simple email template in Text Expander that is schedule 15, because I want them to schedule 15 minutes with me. Hey, Sam, I'd love to hear more about your firm. Let's jump on a quick call at your convenience. You can schedule on my calendar directly via this link. Looking forward to learning more about you. And this link actually goes to my 15-minute scheduling link in Acuity. So anytime someone sets up a call like this with me, it automatically books it. It adds it to my calendar, gives me all of the information, and I can actually show you a little bit of what this looks like. So I'll just scroll quickly so you don't get their info. But it'll show up on my calendar. So at call time, I have that person's information. And it's also connected through a system where it automatically schedules a Zoom call for me. So I'm going to slow that down just a little bit. and show you. This is Text Expander. So this is the email that I just demoed for you. So Text Expander is a desktop app that lets you streamline everything. So email templates, frequently used links I use a lot in here, and essentially you're creating a short code. So way down here where you see abbreviation, I have semicolon, schedule 15, and you'll see there's no spaces. So the trick to this is really making sure that you're using it. You're using shortcuts that aren't things that you would actually type out, so that you don't type out schedule and then every time you type out the word schedule, this email appears. So you want it to be specific. So starting it, I learned this trick from Ernie the attorney. If you start with a semicolon and then no space, that is a format that you would never actually use if you were just typing. So this is a good way to do it. Follow-up 15 minutes is another one that I use a lot. So after I talk to someone, my sales funnel is either I give them a proposal for a website, or maybe they're not ready for that, or maybe they're like, hey, I'm just starting out, I'm on a restricted budget, in which case I send them pretty much the same email. I customize it a little bit, but basically I offer them a paid strategy session, or I give them the link to my online course, the promo code for 50% off, and then, you know, I'm not doing this anymore, so I'm gonna go ahead and edit this while we're in here. Okay, so the short code for that is semicolon, follow-up 15 minutes. Pop over here into the email, and I'm gonna type in semicolon, follow-up 15 min. Hey, John, boom. And then there's the email. So this is huge. This is huge for streamlining. This saves a ton of time on its own. And so I'm going to show you a little bit about the Acuity link too. I keep these Acuity shortcut links in Text Expander as well, so that I can get to them quickly. So for example, for my 1 hour link, I do semicolon 1 hour. No? 1 HR. Okay. So I can easily quickly send people to my booking page. So the system that you're looking at now is called Acuity. This is the Acuity dashboard. You basically integrate it with your calendar. You can set custom availability types, so you can decide when you want to be available for calls, and it'll only book calls that fall within the hours that you said you're available, but also when you have availability on your actual calendar. And so you can give people scheduling page links for that. You can also integrate intake forms. So if someone is scheduling a call with you, there may be, let's see, initial call, is that this one? Yeah, you may have some specific questions that you want to ask them, especially if you're doing a free initial call with someone. You really want to get a lot of information from someone, because, well, one, that'll weed out people who are just wasting your time and not really interested in your services, and it'll tell you more about them so you can make the most of your call time together. You have their website link or whatever info you need from them that you can really look at ahead of time. And it impresses the client when you do that, or the potential client, because they see that you've done your homework, that you've taken time, to look at their stuff, even though, it only took maybe 5 or 10 minutes. The other cool thing that I was telling someone about is, so for my 1 hour scheduling link, let's just say someone scheduled time with me, we did our hour consultation, whatever. For people who are doing regular consultations, if coaching or consulting is your primary business, a really, really good thing to do, if you're using a tool like this, is to integrate this feature called follow-ups. So I have an email that goes out exactly 30 days after each appointment that says, let's check in on your progress. Hey, such and such, it's been about a month since our session. I'd love to schedule a follow-up to see what kind of progress you've made. You can schedule directly using this link. Look forward to catching up. This is basically a huge, like my biggest consulting retention tool. Almost everyone schedules another session with me. And someone actually yesterday emailed and thanked me for the prompt. So don't think that doing something like this is like forcing someone into another session. If they don't want to do another session, they will just ignore it. But for the most part, people who need coaching and consulting services, monthly is a really good frequency for them, which is what I found. So that's a good note. Oh, Andrew LeGrand also had a note that I was going to share, that for text expander. So he also used to use the semicolon shortcut at the beginning. And so he's saying he now uses the X because it's on the main keyboard of an iOS keyboard. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So yeah, so you can make this whatever you want. Just be very, very careful that it's not something that you would type in everyday life, because then you'll end up sending some weird stuff to people on accident. Acuity. Okay, cool. So Acuity, as well as being something that you can use for hourly services. So one of the big streamlining components of this is that I don't have to send someone a separate invoice for a 1-hour consultation. I don't have to figure out if they've paid or not. They have to pay once they actually book this call with me. So within the actual Acuity setup, there's PayPal integration. So people pay when they book. You can't book unless you pay. This is also connected directly into my QuickBooks Online account. So it automatically resolves itself each time someone books this service. You can also use it for bigger services. So I have a copywriting service called Story Branding, and the service includes a lot of things, which I've listed here, but the initial call that I do with the client is just 1 hour. So I have it set where they're essentially booking their kickoff call with me, and they're paying. And again, that's hooked in through QuickBooks Online, and it is set to automatically resolve itself in billing. So it saves a lot of steps to do it this way. Another thing that saves a lot of steps is within Acuity, there are integrations, and one of the integrations that I have added is Zoom. So therefore, whenever anyone schedules a call with me, it automatically sets up a Zoom link, automatically sends it out to them as the quote unquote location for the meeting, and it adds it to my calendar so that when it's call time, all I have to do is click the link and join the call. So I don't have to go back and forth with people about Zoom links or set one up manually and then maybe forget to do it. It's all built in. Okay. So streamlining and delegating, I'm just going to keep this small for now because I'm going to go back to my screen in a second. One of the best ways to, no, let me make it look good. Let's see, view present. Okay, so one of the most effective ways to streamline is to batch process things. And by that, I mean take a whole bunch of like tasks that are similar to each other and do those things together. So whenever, basically, the way that our brains work is that it is actually very hard for us to multitask or shift focus from one thing to another. Some people are very good at it and say that this is not hard. However, it still exerts a tremendous amount of energy, a lot more than if you were working on one task all the way through, or if you have a bunch of small tasks doing those things together. So if I have 20 clients and once a week I need to go on Twitter, check their messages, repost some things, follow some new people, I want to do that all at once. I want to do that for each client in a row. I want to take a day and say, this is my client Twitter day, and I'm going to batch process and I'm just going to go all in, versus saying I'm going to do a little bit of this and then I'm going to go check this account and then I'm going to write a blog post and then I'm going to do this. Keep your brain on similar tasks in succession. Delegating is huge. We talked a lot about that, and virtual assistants is also huge. A lot of times people who are freelancing or just starting out or running a small solo business don't think they can afford virtual assistants. However, there's a lot of really affordable options. And I think the very basic place to start would be with a tool like Fancy Hands. So Fancy Hands is a virtual assistant service, and the way that it works is you have this dashboard, and you essentially type in a request, and then your virtual assistant takes care of your request for you. This could be a lot of different things. This could be transcriptions. So one of my previous requests was that I was writing some notes. I printed out my biography that someone wrote for me. I was putting a bunch of notes on it. And it ended up being actually like a lot of notes, like handwritten on the backs of pages. So I had them transcribe that for me. So that's one thing. We had a client give us a lot of messy CSVs that was going to take quite a bit of time to actually compile into the format we needed to upload it into the email marketing system. So I had Fancy Hands consolidate them into one CSV with only the fields we needed, which is first name and email address. So you'll notice you also want to be, when you're using tools like this, you want to be very specific about exactly what you want. This was another thing that I just didn't feel like sitting and doing manually myself. So I had them create the CSV with first name and email address from this random list of things that someone copy pasted to me. So yeah, so transcription, that's one of the things. You can also, I haven't done this in a while, but let's just say you need to call AT&T to talk about your phone bill and you don't feel like sitting on hold for 20 minutes waiting for a representative. You can have Fancy Hands call them, sit on hold for you, and then patch you in whenever they actually come on the phone. So that's a really good use for it. They can also make purchases for you up to a certain amount with like your card on file. You just, let them know that a purchase is approved and what to get and where to send it. Yeah, and pretty much they can make phone calls on your behalf. So you could say, call around and find me 3, so many places are closed now. Call around and find me 3 places that are open for dinner tonight where we can eat outside. That's something that could take a long time to do that your virtual assistant could do for you. They can do research tasks, pretty much any basic task that you could explain to someone how to do, they can do that for you. So this is a really good tool. Virtual assistants, of course, you can also find actual people. So if your business involves a lot of people calling you and you want to start filtering out those calls, you could check out a service like Call Ruby Receptionist. And that is another example of virtual assistants. It's a virtual receptionist service, essentially. And then, of course, if you need something that's a little bit more high touch, you can always look at getting an independent person to help you out. So for me, we have things that come up here and there with, between our books and between like client services and all of these other things that are just very random. So my little sister actually is a virtual assistant with us. And so she works maybe like 3 hours a week and handles miscellaneous things for us, but in like a high touch personal way. It also works out for me personally because my sister is someone I'm comfortable giving more personal information to. So for example, the AT&T phone call, if I don't want to call AT&T or, my car insurance provider or anything, she can actually just do that for me and pretend to be me on the phone. So that works out really well. And the last thing we're going to be talking about is motivating yourself. So this is probably the hardest thing to do out of all of these things, especially with what's going on in the world and especially with, how hard things are. A lot of us are moving less than we normally do. So my first tip for staying motivated is to find different ways to move throughout the day. This could be, going on a quick jog if you're a runner. Personally, I'm not. This could be taking a yoga class either in the park or virtually. And actually one of my favorite tools is there's this app called 7 Minutes, and it's a guided 7-minute workout that you can do anytime throughout the day. So if you're, if you end a client call early and you find yourself with some bonus time, that's like a really good time to just catch like a 7-minute movement based sort of mini workout. And I found that to boost my productivity a lot. I also use the Pomodoro method, which you can find online timers to Pomodoro. I use a physical timer because I feel like it just works better for me personally. And it's really cute. And so I keep it on my desk. And having the physical timer actually also reminds you to actually use it as a tool. And so if you're unfamiliar with it, the Pomodoro method is essentially where you work for a spurt and then you break for a spurt. Typically that's 25 minutes. You work all the way through on a task. You take a 5-minute break, then you work for 25 minutes and you go 3 rounds and then you take an hour break. That's actually just really a good way to work in general. We weren't meant to be sitting at computers for 4 hours plus at a time without moving. So the 25 minutes is a really good guide to take, a 5-minute break. Your 5-minute break could be like getting up and running to the bathroom, refilling your water, just taking a stretch, just standing up and stretching is a really good idea. And meditation has also been really helpful for me. I use an app called Insight Timer. And my shaman currently has me doing this very intense Kriya where there's actually also chanting and movements. And so if you want to even like go deeper into it, there's things that actually blend meditation and movement and all these other things. If you have any questions about that, just send me a message and I can share more about that. And then this week, I discovered the magic of virtual co-working and the accountability of that. So my friend Lynn hosts a virtual co-working meetup actually 3 times a week. And I joined that yesterday and I took my task with me. And I got everything done at a much faster rate than I normally did because at the beginning, you tell the group what you're working on. You work for a 45-minute spurt. And then you give an update on where you are. So for the most part, you're way less likely to get distracted with other things because you've dedicated this time. You've almost made an appointment with yourself to use this time to do these specific things. So you're less likely to get dragged into some email conversation or, checking things or, working on something else that's not part of what you did. So there's tons of virtual co-working options that you can find online. Lynn's is called Focus Time specifically, and hers is actually queer specific. She said that she was noticing that a lot of the spaces that she was finding online were just very like male dominated and very not queer focused, and it was a lot for her to explain her work to the people in those groups. So she just made her own group. And it was super cool, and we met some neat people. So I'm excited to keep doing this once a week and keeping this appointment with myself to be able to, really get some cool stuff done. The other benefit is hearing what other people are working on. And for me, I actually got some really cool ideas of like passion projects that I backburnered, just being inspired by people using this time and space to work on things that weren't necessarily tied directly to their primary income source. So that was really, really interesting too. Okay, and that concludes my show and tell for this week. Thank you for joining us.